Do you trust the banks? Do you trust the politicians? The majority of people, not all, but the majority of people say no, they're a bunch of crooks. But what can we do about it? And there's so much information out there now that if you took the time to read it, yeah, it might make your hair curl and it might make you feel quite angry and upset. But it's really important to get that understanding for yourself.
You're listening to Getting It Wrong to Get It Right.
On today's episode, we are thrilled to have Clare Darwish, a seasoned Bitcoin enthusiast. Clare went from having a thriving business to going bust. But on the road to recovery, she started to look at cryptocurrencies and felt it was something that bloomers needed to know more about. And hence, Bitcoin for Bloomers was created. Clare, welcome to the show. What made you wake up and realise it was something that you needed to look at and then investigate into?
Oh, that's a good question, Joe. I think when I started to take it really seriously, that was prompted by I have two sons, and back in 2017 they were in their late 20s, and they started to talk to me about Bitcoin and also about cryptocurrencies in general. Now, this is something that I was there right at the very start in 2009. I think it was January the 3rd. Was the very start, the first, I'm not sure if that was the launch of the white paper, the Bitcoin white paper, which is available free of charge online, or that's when the first Bitcoin was mined. So 2009 to now, that's a fair wee bit, we're talking 14, 15 years. I was interested in it and I was asking, talking to my sons about it, because the young ones, you think, well, they'll know all about it. And they were really negative, really resistant. It's a scam, it's a this, we don't know what it is. Don't go near it, Mum. So, but the people who were talking about it, I had known for quite some time. And one of the author of the first book that ever mentioned Bitcoin was a young man called Simon Dixon. And Simon was an investment banker. He worked in the London Stock Exchange, and he was a market maker. So he was making a lot of money. He was in his early 20s. He was just a young man. He was making a lot of money for a lot of high net worth clients. And he knew within a couple of years that the monetary system that he was working in was not really very honest or fair. In fact, it was pretty corrupt. And having got a master's in economics, he also felt that the textbooks explanation of economics didn't fit today's market, today's climate. Because we've all seen rises and falls over the years that have happened for centuries, but he felt there's something wrong here. I'm not comfortable about it. Now, at the same time, his father, who was a self-made millionaire, had really worked hard throughout his life and made a lot of money. He got stung in the dot-com bubble, which was at the beginning of the 2000s. So he lost everything. And he asked his son, Simon, what is going on? What did I do wrong? And can you find out, is there a better way to do this? Because the monetary system seems to be very corrupt. Good people are getting wiped out over and over again. And Simon he decided he was going to try and reform the banking system. And by the time we got to 2010, he'd written a book called Bank to the Future. Now, we were connected on a business network somewhere in the UK then, and I was involved in property. And I was doing really well in property. I was getting money hand over fist. I was building a big property portfolio. I ended up with about 30 rental properties. I started a property networking club. I was helping other people like me, ordinary people, to get onto the property ladder, which was becoming very popular at the time. The banks were inviting me to speak to their clients. Their clients were lawyers, solicitors who were dealing with the people who had died, passed on. I can't remember the word now, and accountants and financial advisors saying we've got investment housing loans. So I got into the market right at the start of that boom in the early 2000s, and I had a fantastic experience for about 10 years, and then boom, 2008, everything crashed. And I, along with many, many others, got wiped out. Now, at that time, I had invested, I had acquired a fair bit of money. I was very, very confident about what I was doing, and I decided to go into property development. And I put up a lot of money. I had two major high street banks fighting to get the deal. It was a multi-million-pound deal. And in the end, I went with one bank, and a year later, it was all gone. And my contribution, my own financial contribution that I had to put in, which was not unsubstantial, it was a lot of money, it disappeared. So I got knocked sideways, and it was very, very painful for me. Now, at the same time, I started to hear about this Bitcoin thing, and I thought, this looks interesting. And because I know Simon Dixon, and I bought his book, I was one of the first people to buy his book, that mentioned Bitcoin, Bank to the Future, Protect Your Wealth Before Governments Go Bust. This was back in 2010, 2011. He talked about the Great Depression of the 2020s. So I'm interested. I'm scarred, I'm bruised, because I've just been knocked sideways by the bank, and I realise I don't understand what's going on here. But I was too scared to get involved because, well, number one, I was broke. I was trying to keep a roof over my head and feed my children. And so I wasn't in the right place.
Something that a lot of people aren't aware of 2006 to 2009, when we had the recession right across the world. A lot of people who had mortgages and who were of a certain age got really hit with what happened then. And those people are still today in financial difficulties and will never get out of it because there was a generation there. But what people have to be really clear and understand, when all the houses and the mortgages and everything, when the banks crashed, the insurance companies kicked in and they paid the banks for all those mortgages. So the banks are actually double dipping when they're chasing and looking for people. So these vulture funds that are now in the likes of Ireland that are claiming and asking people for money, it's double dipping because they got paid out on the insurance already. And that's an important statement and fact that people need to realize. So moving forward as we go into the 2020, it's people like you and people like myself, we're starting to really understand what the banking system is and how it is an entrapment for ourselves. And even the word mortgage, I think it means slavery debt in French or something. So I just want to clarify that with the audience as well. Yeah,
100%, Joe, 100%. And unfortunately for me, I was sort of on cloud nine. Everything was everything in the garden was rosy. I loved what I was doing. I started my own letting agency. It grew very, very quickly. I loved putting the tenants and the landlords together. Then I started sourcing properties for investors, quite a few from Ireland, actually. They're still friends today. And then I got into this development. It was a big development on a golf course. And I thought, well, these are £1 million homes. These shouldn't be affected by any sort of decline in the property market. Millionaires don't want to live in suburbia. They want to live on the golf course. And so it didn't make sense to me. So I went down this rabbit hole, and honestly, I cried for about 9 months. I couldn't believe what was happening. I'm turning up at the dole saying, can you help me pay my rent, pay my mortgage? So anyway, fast forward. So the Bitcoin thing comes in, and I'm starting to realise this whole system's corrupt. It's nothing new. Now today, if you ask your listeners, do you trust the banks? Do you trust the politicians? The majority of people, not all, but the majority of people will say, no, they're a bunch of crooks. But what can we do about it? And there's so much information out there now that if you took the time to read it, it might make your hair curl and it might make you feel quite angry and upset. I've gone through the 5 stages of grief when I found out what was going on. But it's really important to get that understanding for yourself, because now, to me, I've realised that it's unlikely that we will be able to change the system in my lifetime, or even for the next generation or two, because it's so entrenched and it goes back thousands of years. It's not a new thing.
Ever dreamed of having your own podcast? Look no further. Our comprehensive podcast course will guide you through the process of building your reputation, growing your brand, and connecting with your network. With our course, you'll learn everything you need to know about creating a successful podcast, including choosing the right equipment, crafting engaging content, recording and editing techniques, marketing and promotion strategies, and many more. Whether you're a seasoned podcaster or just starting out, our course is designed to help you take your podcast to the next level. Don't miss out on this opportunity to build your brand and connect with your audience. Enroll in our course today.
Like, it's interesting you say that, because you were spot on about when you do start to look up at these things and stop taking what politicians are saying and stop actually listening to what mainstream media is telling you, because it's all sort of like one-sided, and you start looking at things yourself.
Yeah.
You kind of, like, even I didn't sleep for weeks because of the worry and what I was learning, and was going, oh my God, is it really this corrupt? And yes, it was.
Yes, yeah.
And what I'm learning, and that's why it's great having you on, there seems to be a movement and more people are starting to ask questions. And the two things that are really popping up is digital currency and decentralized currency as well, which is fascinating.
Yes, it is. And this is, for me personally, I feel so confident about this now. I've learned so much about it. But back in 2017, my sons when they started talking about it, I thought, okay, I'm just going to get in. And I bought like 100 quid's worth or something like that. And I forgot about it. I knew I had to secure it. So I put it into a hard wallet. And then I forgot about it for a year or two. And then when I went back and looked at it, I thought, oh, this is interesting. But throughout that time, it kept popping up. And I thought, what's the difference between centralised and decentralised? What's digital money? Well, we're using money digitally. Most people use a card, or you use your Apple Watch, or you use your phone. Very few people are using cash. Of course, right at the start of this journey, I realised that only 3% of the actual currency, the cash, the money that we use is in cash, only 3% around the world. So most of the financial transactions are done digitally anyway. But what's this new digital economy? What's this cryptocurrency? Now, I did actually go back in 2020. I then went and got the white paper, and I thought, I'll need to read this, because I've continued to follow Simon Dixon, people like Max Kaiser, and then people like Michael Saylor comes on the scene in the early 2020, because at the start of the pandemic, Michael Saylor, for people who don't know who he is, he's one of the major fund management firms, MicroStrategy, very, very successful. And at the start of the pandemic, he realised we've got a problem here, because all these businesses are going to the wall. What's happened to the economy? Inflation's going to go through the roof. What are we going to do? And so he called a board meeting, a Zoom meeting, and said to his crew, any of you heard about Bitcoin? Do you understand what cryptocurrencies are? And of course, they all said no. And he said, I'm going to send you 3 videos and 10 papers, documents. Let's go through that and we'll reconvene and we'll decide whether we're going to give this a go. And today, Michael Saylor is one of the biggest advocates for Bitcoin. Now, there's a difference between Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is the original one that started it in the Genesis block back in 2010. And since then, there's hundreds of them now. And most of them are scams. Most of them will just disappear. They're jokes. It's a bit of fun. There are 1 or 2 that have a value, that have a utility. But the only real, the real asset that is now actually recognised as a commodity by the Securities and Exchange Commission, who regulate the stock market and investment market, is Bitcoin, right? So for me, it's the king. And the blockchain technology on which it's built is what the other coins have actually copied, because it's open source. So, it's free, available, and the individual or the group of individuals who brought it to the market have gone quiet. So it's there for people to use, to learn about, and to drive it forward. So there's a thing called hyper-Bitcoinization, which means when enough people like you and I get behind it, it could eventually become the sort of global currency. It could be a currency that everybody can use. The benefits of it are that there's about 2.5 billion people on the planet today that don't even have a bank account. They don't qualify. But most of them have a mobile phone. So if you have a mobile phone, you can open a wallet. These applications are all free. You can learn how to secure it, and you can buy some. And you can buy $5 worth, $500 worth, $5 million worth.
It's quite interesting as well, because what we're noticing is there is, especially in Ireland, there is a big movement on cash. And there's people who are now going out and taking out cash and spending it. And there's shops saying cash only. There are people who are no longer using self-checkouts at supermarkets. They're queuing up because they're going, it's taking away jobs. But also with that movement, they're going, okay, if digital currency comes in, which will be run by the central banks, people's freedoms are completely gone. And governments are really trying to stop Bitcoin, and they're trying to stop all these different currencies, the decentralized currencies, because they know that if people are using these, that they're losing taxes and revenue. So it's quite interesting to see this develop. What are your thoughts, or what is baby boomers thinking about it? Because when I speak to people, they go, I can't be dealing with that. That's old codswallop. What's the response been over the last year or so with people?
I'm finding more and more people are coming to me now and asking for support, and mainly women. Mainly women. So I think women are more risk averse. They're more careful with their money. And so they know they can we have an intuitive, feeling towards certain things that are happening on the planet, don't always voice it. But more and more women are now beginning to realise, hang on a wee minute, I've got really good friends who are a lot older, very, very worried about if you have more than here in the UK, £85,000, I think in Ireland it's, is it 150,000 euros? You're a bit more, you get a bit more. Australia and the US, it's certainly $250,000. There is the government guarantee that if a bank collapses, they will bail you out. But I can tell you from the years from my networking days in property, the government lifeboat's full of holes as well. So how they're going to, if the banks did collapse, and this is what people are hearing, there's all these rumblings that the banks are collapsing. And of course, between April and May, 5 big banks went under. And so there is a cause for concern there naturally. Nobody wants to lose their hard-earned money. And certainly when you get to this stage, the boomers, we're labelled as, we're scooping up we're loaded now, we're much better off and all the rest of it, and the young ones can't go on the property ladder. But they don't give any attention to the fact that we've worked for 40 or 50 years and worked damn hard to acquire assets, because that's what we're taught, that's what we were told to do. And during, in the early days, there was a lot of information coming out of Ireland about farmers having their land just confiscated by the banks, even though they had documentation saying that, everything had been paid off. But most farmers are tenants, and a lot of them are mortgaged. The farm equipment's not cheap. And it's heartbreaking to see this, that people didn't understand what their rights were and all the rest of it. So it's all part of the mix. So today we've got Bitcoin, which is a decentralized source of money. It's just electronic cash. It's just a way of people peer-to-peer. I can send money to a friend in Australia, or I could send some money over to you, Joe, pay you in euros or in Bitcoin, and you can then sell that and get euros for it. But that transaction would take no longer than 10 minutes. It would be confirmed within an hour. If I had to go to the bank and do an international bank transfer, it would cost me 25 quid for a start. And then it would take 2 or 3 days to get to your bank account. So we're circumventing. This is what I want to get across. really it's a way. There's nothing illegal about it. It's perfectly legal, but it's unconfiscatable and it's unregulatable. So the governments can't control it because it's the people who buy it that control it. We decide what we're doing with it. There's a lot of negative news. You have to go and find out for yourself. Who do you believe? Dig a little bit deeper. You usually find that most of that negative news is scaremongering, because this is a huge threat. It's also a great opportunity for us to be able to circumvent. We can take some of the money out of the dirty system, the corrupt system, and we can convert it into something that's new, innovative, freeing. It's exciting. And it is scarce, because there are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin mined. There's already been 19 million mined, and about 4 million have been lost. They're sitting on hard drives and computers in a rubbish dump somewhere. And how does that work? Believe me,
is it the one thing that, let's call it, the establishment want? They want everyone to own nothing and be happy, and basically be feeding off the system for everything. And when you're relying on a system for everything, you lose some of your freedom, or you lose all your freedom, because you're frightened that this lifeline of survival will be cut. So they're fearful of Bitcoin and other currencies. But when the banks go and all these other places, which a lot of people believe that they are screwed, and the government's bailing them out again, and we're back to this thing that happened back in 2009, are we going down a road where it's only either going to be a currency which we believe now is dropping in value every year, or are we going to be really depending on the likes of Bitcoin? And that's just, if you hold that down. The other question I have as well, a lot of people, when they try to get involved in it, there's a learning curve about wallets and how to set them up, that they just get overwhelmed with it and throw it to the side.
Yes, they do. And that's not... Well, look, there's lots of commentators out there and lots of people pitching, do this, do that, do the next thing, buy my program, get my coin. You know, we'll have a Brit coin coming out soon. If the central bank digital currencies do finally get to the market, which they're threatening, and I think they've been working on it for years, so we're only just starting to hear about it, but you can bet your life. I remember when I was in Australia 2 years ago, hearing Rishi Sunak, who's now the Prime Minister of Britain, talking about the central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs. So they're coming, whether you like it or not. The majority of people will probably go along with it. The government might even offer an incentive. You know, we'll put £1,000 into your account, €1,000, if you switch over to the central bank digital currency. That's different from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a standalone. No one controls it. There's no boardroom. There's no individuals. It's just ordinary people. But the wallet situation, the confusion is that you need to be a little bit technical. So for me, being older, a lot of my friends have said, will you help me? And then I said, okay, sit down, let's go and get a coffee. You got your phone, download that app. Okay. Let me send you, give me your wallet address. Where do I find that? Click there. All right. And then I just send them a £5. And they hear the money dropping in. They go, and they hear it coming in. They go, oh, wow.
Now you can buy me a coffee for that £5.
Exactly. And so I've done that so many times, Joe, just to show how simple it is. But of course, like anything new, we have these psychological barriers. And that's the biggest challenge that I have, trying to help people overcome that. Now, it's getting easier because the first question I will ask people is, why are you interested? What do you want to know? Because I need to know. If I know a little bit about their background, then it makes it a lot easier for me to direct them, point them in the direction they need to go, rather than try and explain the whole thing. There's loads of books out there. I've got on my website, I do recommend a lot of good books.
If you look at what happened in Lebanon basically just froze everybody's bank accounts and then offered them something like 30% back.
Yeah.
But what they also did was stopped everyone using Bitcoin. So they made it that not illegal to actually use Bitcoin. So everything went into the black market. And Also, we can look at Nigeria, what happened in Nigeria. Basically, the banks stopped trading as well. And you could see online people wrecking ATM machines. So
Yeah.
when we talk about this, we think about our own countries or our own situations, whereas Ireland and England. But the reality is there are countries in the world that are already being affected by the decision of the banks. And if these people didn't at least have a wallet of some sort as a backup, you'd be really screwed. So is it not just a case of going, okay, you're living in the real world, reality is this, but have a wallet, have it all set up just in case?
Absolutely. I mean, that's just common sense. That's just being prepared. Because if we don't trust the system, then it's incumbent on us to find our own way. You know, you can stockpile food, you can start growing your own food. There's always a solution to whatever the big concern is at the time. And of course, the news media, the propaganda that's put out there is nothing new. Joe, back in the Great Depression of the 1920s in America, they confiscated all the gold, right? And they said to everybody, okay, you're not allowed to have gold anymore, so everybody bring your gold in, otherwise we're going to arrest you. And they gave them $20 for an ounce of gold, right? So the people said, oh, well, at least we're getting something. Immediately, they then revalued the gold at $35. So they made a killing. And that's how, and this is nothing new. When you start to look at this and you'll see over and over and over again, and the same names keep popping up. Now, the thing is, the banks are above the law. There isn't a law in the land anywhere in the world that can overtake I think the banking laws were repealed way back, right, in the day. And then, of course, when Nixon removed the dollar from the gold standard in 1960, that was to create, so that he could, 66, so that he could create more money to fund the Vietnam War. That executive order was never repealed.
Look at the euro. Everyone pulls out and has a look at the euro note. It doesn't say currency on it.
No.
When we had the punt and the pound, it had the word currency.
And it's just it's a way of transacting business. We can exchange anything we want for a service or utility or food or whatever it is. It's up to, there's no law to prevent us from doing that. But yeah, to get back to your point, it makes perfect sense. The majority of people are not going to go with, but there's over 100 million Bitcoiners in the world, and I'm very much Bitcoin. I'm not interested in anything else. I don't trade it. I do not trade it. I'm not into that. I know a lot of people do that, but I'm very, very cautious now because of what happened to me. I'm a risk taker. I will go out there and try new things, but I am very risk averse when it comes to money, and I certainly don't trust the banks. So accumulating little decimal, the thing I love about Bitcoin is the way it's been created is that we can have a fraction of a Bitcoin. You don't need to own you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin at £23,000 or $27,000.
But that brings up a question. That Bitcoin last year was 70,000.
Yes.
And then it dropped down to 10,000 or below. And now it's peaking up. And there's the thing that when I looked at coins and looked at, the Forex market as well, no matter if they're in or out of a system, they're still driven by people's emotions. People get nervous, they do one thing or the other. So being the height of over 70,000 and now dropping down, is it still too volatile? I'm sure there's people who bought it at 70,000 and have lost everything because it dropped to pittance. How do we manage or look at it in such a way that we go, okay, this is a coin, or do we look at like a stock without a cert? Do you follow what I'm trying to get at?
Yes, I do. Often ask this question. Now, what you're talking about there is what we call fiat thinking. We're thinking in the fiat currency monetary terms that we've all grown up with. Okay, in this digital economy, there's a difference. The value is not in the price of Bitcoin, it's in the commodity itself. If you've got something that there's a limited supply of, is it going to become more valuable? If you look at art, if you look at a piece of art by, I don't know, Banksy, right? Does he sell for a few hundred, a few thousand, or a few million now? Because there's only one Banksy. So the fact that there's only one Banksy and his work is unique makes his art extremely valuable, right? So it's the same with Bitcoin. We don't know how much gold is left on the planet. We don't know how much silver. These are valuable commodities as well. But the fact that the SEC has recognised and confirmed that Bitcoin is now a commodity, that should be a light bulb moment for a lot of people, because it cannot be regulated, it cannot be confiscated, and it's fully decentralised, so nobody's controlling it. Now, they can control, they can tax you on the profits that you make from it if and when you sell it. But the point I try to get across to people is, and it's a simple way to explain it. You have euros and cents, yeah, in Ireland. We've got pounds and pence. In Bitcoin world, we have Bitcoin and Satoshis, and the Satoshis are the fractions of the Bitcoin. So I can buy 50 quid's worth, 100 quid's worth. I don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. And my goal is to acquire as many Satoshis, little nuggets, little Bitcoin nuggets as I can, because, and this is a longer term investment opportunity. This is not something that I want to be buying a pizza with or buying a coffee with. I'm not investing in it to use it as an alternative to fiat. Obviously, you need your fiat money to pay your rent and buy your petrol and, feed your kids. But this as an investment opportunity is quite different now. The volatility is another thing again, okay, in the markets. If you know anything about stock markets, you need volatility. That the traders, when the price is high, that's when most traders will buy, and when it starts to fall, that's when they'll sell, and that's how they lose. But the investors will wait until the price falls. So every time Bitcoin dips, it's at 27 today, it might be 26 tomorrow, or 25. I'll buy another whatever it is, whatever I've got, spare, 50 quid, 100 quid. You don't need a lot of money to get started.
Do you suggest that people buy, 50 euros a month,
Yes.
£50 a month just to get used to it?
Yes, and to do that on a regular basis, that's called dollar cost averaging. So there are statistics that show that if you took, let's say you had £5,000, you could buy £1,000 a month of Bitcoin for the next 5 months, or you could just buy £5,000 worth today, or euros. But the statistically, when you look back, it will show that people who bought £1,000 a month will make maybe 40% more than somebody who buys it on day one. So there is a wee bit of education, and I always encourage people to just start small. Just start small, buy £100. If you can afford £100 a week, go for it. If you can afford £100 a day, go for it. But don't spend any more than you can afford to, that you're comfortable with, and break it up into small. Buy it regularly. I spoke to a friend of mine in Australia yesterday. She's been acquiring it every month. She puts it on automatic. So some banks will not allow you. The threat is so great they will not allow you.
That there's banks actually stopping people from buying Bitcoin. And you're kind of going, hang on, it's my money. And they're going, oh no, we're putting these blocks in to protect you. And people go, well, you're not protecting me, it's mine.
I know, especially older people, because they think you're going to get caught up in a scam, and that's understandable, because there are a lot of people who've got caught up in scams. So you can't go into, it's not wise to go into it just, right, okay, I'll have a go and see what happens. Do a little bit of research. There's lots of great information out there. Get comfortable with it. Speak to other people about it. There's so much information coming out now. There are maps now showing you where you can actually spend if you wanted to buy, a motorbike, or if you wanted to get a house builder who was happy to accept Bitcoin. Can you pay for your house in Bitcoin? Of course you can, as long as that because you're really just exchanging it from fiat into Bitcoin, and then when you need it, if you need to pull it out, you can sell it and then transfer the money back into your bank account and use it again. So to me, the holistic aspect of this, which is what really gets me excited, is I'm taking something that has got this dirty, tarnished, energy around it, and I'm converting it into something new and clean and exciting that people own. It's not owned by the banks. It's not controlled by the governments. That's the exciting part of it. It's a complex subject, Joe. It's not easy to explain to people.
So what you'd be saying is, learn about it, try it, educate yourself, and see where it goes. There's people that spend 50 quid a month on a lunch, or on a week on a lunch. So, learn about it because it's fascinating. Have we left anything out?
Oh gosh, it's such a big topic. I could talk about this for hours, Joe. There's plenty to learn.
Yeah, you've got about 5 minutes.
I know. But I think the biggest thing, the message I want to get across to people is if you are concerned about your money in the bank, you're quite right to be so. If you want some help, reach out. There's plenty of really good people out there. There's some fantastic. Michael Saylor, Simon Dixon is now my mentor. I actually used some of the profits from my Bitcoin investments a couple of years ago. And I did Simon has a website called Retirement Plan B. There are 4 fantastic free videos there that give so much information, and I have watched them over and over again. So you can go there. I actually then paid for the course, and I did say to him on one of the calls, "Can I pay in Bitcoin?" "Yes, sure." And I just did it there and then. And it's a tough course. I'm not going to recommend. I'm not suggesting anybody goes and does that right away, but certainly from my point of view, it's given me comfort, it's given me confidence, and it's given me a much clearer understanding of how the whole system works, because the banking system is in a very, very fragile situation right now. Even Deutsche Bank that had to be pulled out, And you hear these stories about banks being sold for £1. What's that about? Oh my goodness. There's a can of worms we could discuss in another time. But once you understand how it works, then you can say, okay, well, I can see there's all this crappy stuff going on over here. I'm going that way. But not with everything. You're not going all in. You're just going to take a little bit, small steps. And then as you become more and more confident, you'll see over time too that the price is always going to fluctuate. It doesn't matter. The value is in the quantity that you're holding, not the price of the commodity. Today or tomorrow or next year.
Dip your feet in.
Dip your toe in.
Dip your toe in. Tell me, what did you get wrong to get right?
Oh my goodness. Well, we started off talking about my journey in property investment. Now, listen, Joe, I was a single mum. I've raised my kids from a very young age. They're now in their 30s, but I've been on my own with my 2 children since they were only babies, toddlers. So I had a hard slog. And when I started that business, it was a bit of a divine intervention, because I had a little conversation one night and I said, can't live like this any longer. What am I going to do? And this is when I got the idea to get into property. No money, didn't have any money, didn't even have a mobile phone, but I had the idea and it just kept coming to me. And I thought, I've got to follow this up. And I started that business. Now, it took off very, very quickly. I was speaking to lots of people. I had 80, 90, 100 people every month coming to the Marriott Hotel in Edinburgh. It was phenomenal. But what I didn't do was I didn't protect my money. I still trusted the banks because it was so easy for me to get money from them. I didn't even get mortgages. I just phone them up and get another business term loan. I mean, it was amazing. I should write a book on that. But what I didn't do was I didn't protect myself, and I didn't make sure. I thought this is going to keep going. This is a joyride. It's just going to keep going. It's not going to cut. And then wham. And I lost a lot. So thankfully I had a good accountant who advised me about bankruptcy rules, that they're there to protect you, Claire, keep your home, look after your kids. But it was a very painful experience. And I also realised that while I was riding high, money was going through my hands like water. It was like, anything the kids wanted. If I wanted this car, if I wanted it, I didn't appreciate the value of money. Now it's really hard to get me to spend anything, because I go, 50 quid. Do you want to go for this? Like, no, I'll just buy some more Bitcoin. It's down today. So that's what I've learned. We're responsible for our money. We have to take responsibility for our money. We have to be self-sufficient. We cannot rely on the government or the banks or anyone else, even with health matters. There's so much more we could go into here with, people that have come out of this and are now helping other people. Another great resource is Bitcoin University on YouTube. Matthew Cratter, fantastic.
But what about your own site?
Oh, his own website. my own website. So I set up a wee website called breakingfree.club. breakingfree.club. My domain name is Bitcoin for Boomers, and really the goal is to educate people in as gentle a way as I can. So there are some really good resources. I know that you're a fan of Greg Braden. Greg Braden did a lecture a year ago in October last year. Greg was a coder, a computer scientist. I've got that background as well. And there's a fantastic lecture on there explaining what Bitcoin is. You know, humanity is ready for breaking through, and it is all about taking responsibility, taking control, and not giving your power away. So this, to me, Bitcoin is a way to empower yourself. And so on the website, I've got little bits of information that hopefully are simple. People can also book a free consultation just to talk about it, you know, just to get more information. You can do that through the website. And I do a little bit of hand holding as well for people that want to take the next step, so that we can get you on board safely and then help you to get comfortable with it. And lots of support there. I love it. That's what I love doing.
Clare, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Joe. My pleasure.